The 12th of June 2025. It is an atrociously wet day in rural Ireland, folks. Now, certainly I have to accept corrections where people make corrections on the video about minor points. I suppose I have to try and improve my act a bit there. But I'd much rather if I was corrected on making an error in law or an error in fact, other than, well, the time of the day or something like that. Now, one of the things in the video I made on the Garda investigation of murder and the Garda way of investigating, I mentioned Dr. John Harbison, the late state pathologist, and I didn't fully develop what I intended saying about him, and I have to hold my hand up on that one. The late Dr. Harbison told me, and he told several Gardaí, including some senior Gardaí, who were losing their mind over babies being born and maybe dying or being killed, that every parish in Ireland had several bodies dumped every year. I remember one time a superintendent ringing him, and he says, "Superintendent, rural Ireland is littered with the bodies of babies." Now, I won't go into the gross glory details, but I remember one time a student girl had a baby, and she later let it be known that she put it in the bin. And a Dublin-based chief superintendent, not the local chief superintendent, muscled in on it and took over the case, and he insisted that every piece of the dump, the local landfill, be searched. And it took almost a month, sipping through everything with masks on, an unhealthy and a dirty job. And there was no let up. You search away. In my notion, he was mad in the head. He needed a kick up the ass, in my view. And when another person, a senior officer, said to him, "Are you sure you're right? That's a body. That's a human body. Don't forget that," he says. But the fact of the matter is, I used to tell them that in 1949, I'm nearly sure I'm right there, I didn't look it up, Infanticide Act specifically converts the murder or the killing or the failure to report the birth of a baby by the mother while the balance of her mind is disturbed is only a small offence carrying 1 year in prison max. It's a very minor offence. Check out the Infanticide Act, and I'm nearly sure it's 1949. In my opinion, the racket over the Kerry baby case was a way over the top, because as Dr. Harbison tried to tell them, the bogs and ditches of Ireland is full of babies. Now, that was a bit of an exaggeration, but still, it is the truth. Now, when you look at today, that they're ripping babies from the mother's womb and killing them with a hammer, I think maybe it puts it in perspective. Okay, that's not too tasteful for my viewers, but I'm not here actually to entertain my viewers. I'm here to try and tell it as best I can and make any corrections I may make. I would have thought that correcting that law was important. Nobody took it up. Now, the second point I made was, this is on the Garda video today, and someone wants to know how many a day am I uploading. I think I'll go for 736 videos per day, if that's all right now with the viewer there that's very interested to know how many. But the point I made was that in 1939, when the state was threatened, they brought out the Offences Against the State Act to deal with the paramilitaries. But they had nothing for ordinary crime. So if we take 1939, it was 62 years till 1984. If we take 1939, 49, 59, 49, 59, 69, 79, it was 45 years till they changed the Criminal Justice Act to allow a guard who believed he had good evidence that a person there has, after killing a person, stabbing them, cutting their head off, and disposing of their body, there was no law to hold that person in custody for questioning. The person had to be arrested and charged immediately. Nobody took up on that yet. I despair a bit that wasn't noticed, because that was the main point of the video. They're on about which young girl was lost over in the northwest of Ireland and what her name and her all was to do. But the point I was making, which none of them took up, no viewer took up, was that even if the guards knew who did it, they could only arrest the person and charge them. They had no authority to question anybody. And they're on there about an uncle or a priest or whatever it was, and somebody interrupted. The guards had no power to hold anyone in the Garda station or anywhere else to question them for serious crime until 1984. Yet nobody gets that. Nobody seems to see that. To my humble opinion, it's a dire reflection on the state of the Irish nation and its voters that there was no such power. And I believe the reason was cowardice. C-O-W-R-D-I-C-E, isn't it? Cowardice. Was cowardice. And when they brought it in, they attached a whole lot of strings attached. Do you get my point? That's what I'm saying. Nor was there any power to bring the prisoner from the station out to somewhere to look at the scene. So if the prisoner said, I banged his head off a stone in the field, you couldn't bring him out to show you the stone. Until much later, much later, I'd say 1993 or something around there. It was years after. Nobody took up that point. So I thought I was doing a great job by pointing out the law, but no one seems to think it's all that great. I actually think most of my viewers didn't quite catch the point. When you think of it, summers and winters and life in rural Ireland and city Ireland, there was a police force on Garda Síochána, and they'd done the best they could. And when there'd be a crime, the commissioner would say, we're giving all the resources to the Gardaí we need. Balderdash. The minister would say, we're giving all the resources. And they wouldn't give them the basic piece of law that allowed them to arrest a person and to question them under detention. Basic stuff. I make the point in the videos again, and I'm very careful not to name anyone here, because folks, you ain't going to get me on the name of Joe Soap or this one or that one. You're not getting it on this video, whether you like it or whether you don't. But I make the point about that was cowardice. It does not make sense in any democracy that you had to beg a criminal to come to the station to be interviewed about his involvement in a serious crime. There was another case, and I don't like naming, it was a lady that was killed and dumped in a lake, and I'm not going to mention her because it could cause distress. And there's a High Court case on that where the guards held the suspects longer than they should. And the High Court determined that the right of the lady, if she was alive, to live would take over precedence on the right of the prisoner to his freedom. So the judge had to try and make some kind of a law to say that the balance of the Constitution allowed the Gardaí to hold a person. Now, it was very, very poor law when the Gardaí had to resort to the rights to life in the Constitution to hold a person in custody for a no date, no limited time or nothing. And a statement obtained while a person was illegally in custody was a very dodgy strength in court, and judges didn't like illegally obtained statements. So I think I've dealt with that fairly good. These matters have now been put right, I must say. The Criminal Justice Act 1984 is there, and I'm not complaining about that. Just that we know the historical thing. And the point is, you know that in all my videos, I'm down like a plague on the house of the standard political parties of all hue and cry. I know people don't like it. They love their politicians dearly. I don't give two tuppenny damns whether they do or not. The fact is, doesn't that tell you something about Fine Gael, about Fianna Fáil, who were in power and left until 1984 to fix the situation? And all criticisms about how the Garda investigated these offences are null and mute. If they had a fella in there, John Henry McCracken, an uncle of Molly McCracken, who features on my show, and they wanted to question him and somebody interfered, they had no right to have the man in there in the first place. No right whatsoever. He was entitled to get up and walk out on the door. And I made the point again, which wasn't taken up, that the guards used to take one scheduled offence in the Offences Against the State Act, and that was criminal damage to property, where a fella cracked a cast iron frying pan over a person's head and killed them. And the cast iron frying pan cracked. And that was criminal damage and enabled them to arrest the person under Section 30 of the Offences Against the State Act. I would claim that was not too good law, and judges went along with it. But in fairness to judges, they did the best they could not to let out criminals. Meanwhile, the political parties was huffing and puffing. I think Jack Lynch, was he the Taoiseach? I think he was. There was Cosgrave was the Taoiseach. Huffing and puffing and blowing and puffing. I'd just love to know where it was, how he there when this was brought in, 1984. Now, anyway, throughout this period, there was another frigori on, another racket over extradition. And that was one that was hot, because the idea was that IRA-type prisoners, people who were Republican prisoners, who committed crimes in the north, could be extradited back up across the border. And there was hell to play over that. It was on RTE night, noon and morning. I know some of you here will say it should never happen. I'm not too sure if two neighbouring countries can allow criminals to cross the border, but we'll not go there at the moment. But eventually they brought it in with certain restrictions. If I'm going by memory, you can't extradite someone for a religious offence. So if they commit an offence like blasphemy in England, which is now a criminal offence, for example, in England, to criticise a certain prophet is jail. Well, you couldn't extradite a person from the Republic for that, because that's the Constitution, but it's also the Extradition Act. Now, I'm going by memory here, but don't be afraid to tell me I'm wrong. On something like this, did I put the wrong date on the beginning of the video? Well, if I did, no doubt we'll hear about it. Did I put July rather than June? They'll lose their mind over that. A religious offence cannot be extradited. A finance one. You can't extradite a person anywhere. I'm not talking about Britain, I'm talking about all over. You can't extradite anyone for a financial offence, not paying their tax. You've never seen a case of someone not paying their tax. Now, what's the third one? My memory doesn't serve me on the third one. Religious revenue. I think it's military. Now, you'll have to allow me off the hook here, but you can't extradite a person out of Ireland for deserting the military. So if some Irish fella heads off and joins the French Foreign Legion, as I knew some of them to do, and he deserts back to Ireland, he can't be extradited. So you're learning something every day. Am I? I know one or two people who enjoy this type of stuff, but I don't know what's in the heads of the others. Anyway, as my father used to say, we don't want them all to be as smart as us. You see, folks, there's a difference between a minor error made on a budget presentation or production, which doesn't really affect the main point being made, and one which does affect it. Nobody has taken issue with the video yet. So that's basically it on an awful wet day. It is one of the wettest days I've experienced. It is really terrible. I hate going out to check the cattle. I'll get wet no matter what I do. But just to digress to the weather, out on the rivers on the coasts of Ireland and Scotland, salmon and sea trout have been waiting there patiently, waving their wings like this, for weeks. And we had very dry weather there. And this is their lifeline. The floods comes down and they get up to the spawning beds. So for us farmers to say, or is it we farmers? Oh, I better apologise there for the grammar. we farmers, us farmers. Anyway, I say us at the mart, but I know I could be wrong there now, but they still cash me checks, like when I buy cattle and things, they still cash me checks. Maybe they shouldn't, it could be a mistake in it. But the thing about it is that while this weather mightn't suit me and everything else, to the fish species, it's a saving grace. They'll be up now and they'll be mating and spawning and making reds in the river over in the Costello river system in Connemara, which I fished and caught trout in, sea trout. And it's an ill wind that blows no good. Right, folks, that's it. That's a 17-minute video. I hope you enjoy it, and I'll let you go. I doubt if you'll see me today again, but that's all I can say. I've been doing other things. I've been using the bad weather today to get jobs done that doesn't need to be outdoors. So we'll see you back. Good luck.